Hey guys, this is TCA Gaming, and this video is going to be about the first edition Uncut sheet that went through Golden about a week ago or so. I was the winner of that. For those of you who are on my IG, you got to see the picture where I actually overlaid the thin and the thick stamp sheet right beside of each other. And the thin stamp sheet I got last year, and I did a video actually on the 25th anniversary, the 27th, and then I received this one almost exactly a year later. It was on a Monday. We would have been here on that Sunday if they had been open, but I thought that was kind of cool, just a little piece of information there. But anyways, I'm going to actually go over some of the information that's on the sheets, because there's actually some pretty cool stuff that we can learn from it. And so first, I'm going to talk about the thin stamp sheet. This one right here, hopefully I'm having like little pictures pop up here and there on this video thing. I'm going to try to edit it in. I tried to video it and get good shots and then talk about it while I was doing that, but with the glare and constantly having to rotate around the tables and the lighting, it really just wasn't working. Alright, so the thin stamp sheet, that's one I already had. That's not the one that went in auction. This one is a little bit different than the thick stamp sheet, and what I mean by thin and thick stamp is it's referring to the number one in the edition. The thick stamp sheet technically has less of the black, so like more of the background color. The one itself is wider, and then the thin stamp, the one is thinner. Sometimes people think they get the two confused, because when they think thick, they're looking at the black ink instead of like the background and the background space for the one. But that's what it refers to. Now, the thin stamp sheet was signed off by D. Davis. I actually wrote down some notes because I know as soon as I get in here, I was probably going to start rambling. D. Davis, he signed off on, I've had the shadowless uncut sheet, and I've had the test print sheet, and then I believe he may have signed off on the first edition upside down, like unlimited regular sheet too. I can't remember. So that's very similar to those other runs, and we'll see that that's not the case with the thick stamp sheet. Now it's dated January 3rd, 1999. This was right at the beginning of the year 1999, when the release of Pokemon was happening here in America. And it was signed off by Jeannie Maddox. Jeanne Maddox. I'm not sure how she pronounces it, but she was you can actually find some information about her on Google if you ever look her up. But she ended up getting she was part of a lawsuit, so that was weird. But I don't know whatever come of that. But she was actually a production manager at the time, a print production manager. She was over like the quality control, so that's why on the sheet it actually says OK for color. It shows the date, and then she signs off on it. Now, if you notice on here, it also says version 2, and we'll go into that a little bit deeper after I talk about the information that's on the thick stamp sheet. And then it's dated 1/99. That's actually printed on there, not written. That's what's actually printed on the sheet itself. And then you see it's half Machamps on the top, and then the bottom you have the rest in set cards, and everything's first edition. Now, let's transition to the thick stamp sheet that I won off of Golden. That was for $171,000. Really, it was like 172 something, some change after insurance and some other stuff that got added in. But this one isn't signed off by D. Davis. This is the earliest sheet that according to the dates that we've been able to find on the English side for Pokemon. And all of the other early sheets up to this point have actually had a sign off with D. Davis on the backside, but it wasn't that case. Like on the front, you know, they're both signed off on Jeannie Maddox, but for some reason this one was not signed off by D. Davis. He may not have been on board. They may not have been doing that same kind of quality control, which we'll look at here in a minute, because there was some other interesting stuff that's going on with this thick stamp sheet. Now this one is dated a month and 4 days earlier. She signed off and she dated it November 30th, 1999, which I found interesting too. I think it was like 7:25 a.m. or something, like really early in the morning. I mean, that would have been right around Thanksgiving. But at the bottom it also says Form 7, just like the other one. And then I don't know if you guys caught this, before, but it doesn't say Pokemon Premium. It says Pokeman Premium. Now that right there, that made me tickle, a little bit tickled, because kids all the time get on parents for calling Pokemon Pokeman or Pokemans, and that's even a search term that I used to look through eBay for. And I was listening to who was it? Pokenomics, and he was actually talking, or it was on one of their podcasts. One of the guys that was in that podcast was talking about how that used to be one of their search terms. It was one of mine too. Like, I would regularly search eBay Pokeman because you could find good deals that way, because people really thought that was a thing. And of course it wasn't. It's Pokemon. But the thing is, it actually is a thing on this sheet. And right after that, it has the date 11/98. So it does confirm that November 98. So this one should predate, the thin stamp sheet. Now, the top third, you've got the PCD Shadowless Unlimited, and what I mean by PCD is pre-constructed deck. There was 4 pre-constructed theme decks. You had the Overgrowth, the Zap, the Brushfire, and the Blackout, and that's where you get the Ninetales, Machamp, the Gyarados, and the Hitmonchan. Those were always more common back in the day because you could get them anytime you wanted from a theme deck, and the theme deck was not as good of a seller. And then after that, you have the starter deck Holo Machamp, so that's why the whole middle third is just nothing but the Machamps, and those are first edition. And the reason the top third, those are not first edition, is because none of the theme deck cards were ever printed in first edition, and the starter deck was only first edition Machamp. Even when the Unlimited Shadowless or Shadowed version come out, it retained that first edition stamp. And then the same with the pre-constructed deck. None of them were ever printed with the first edition stamp that we know of, other than the Ghost Pikachu that got inserted in there, or I don't even know if it was an accident at this point, but it was most likely an issue with some kind of quality control, and there's like a partial first edition stamp. So some people could say that was one, but ignore that part if you're not really into the errors and that kind of stuff. But I hate saying a universal type thing without also including, those weird variants that come up. And then at the bottom third, you actually have the normal 15 holos that you could pull from a booster pack. Machamp is going to be left out of that because you could only get him through the starter decks. Whereas the pre-constructed theme deck cards, the 4 that I had mentioned before, you could get inside of a booster pack. There's only two Charizards on this one, and there's 4 on the other one. And what I thought was really cool about the thick stamp sheet is showing these in a different 1/3, each of the little sections or whatever you want to call it, is I thought that it was cool that it was similar to the release. If you went to the store, more than likely you were buying a booster pack, a starter deck, or a theme deck. And those were the 3 main releases, and that's exactly how they were released. And so this version itself is completely different than the other sheet, where it only shows the Machamps and the other first edition holos that you can pull from a base set booster pack. Now, it does say version 2 on the thin stamp one, so it could very well mean, hey, this is the second version, the second printing, or whatever you want to call it, a mini print or first edition. We really don't know what it is, but it could also just refer to the layout. It could refer to the fact that the layout that had the entire release, with the theme deck holos, the pre-constructed theme deck holos, the starter deck holos, and the pack holos, that was a version 1, although they didn't put version 1 on there because maybe they didn't. Usually you don't do that for the very first thing if you don't plan on changing up. And then maybe the theme decks didn't sell through well. If you've ever bought from a distributor, usually the theme decks, they don't sell well. So people don't buy them as much. So maybe when they went to print more sheets, they went ahead and took the theme deck holos off of there and optimized it for the starter decks and for the set holos, because that way there would be less waste. Why put it into Shadowless theme decks that people are not really wanting to have? Or we're going to purchase, so they optimized it that way. Maybe they called it a version 2 for that type of sheet when they altered it. Or it very well could be separate releases. We really don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards the sheet being like a different variation, so they just put a version 2, not the fact that there was a difference in the thick and thin stamp. I've heard people talk about how they thought the stamp was added afterwards, and this right here makes it seem like it was actually added on the plates. And from what I used to speak with a print production manager years ago, and she told me that it was on the plates, the first edition stamp. And I've mentioned this a few times, but I don't really ever push this kind of stuff because you never really know the information that comes out, what's true and what's not, unless you were there. So to me, it's still all secondhand. I still wouldn't be surprised, if that wasn't true. And she was saying that there really is no variation between the thick and thin stamp. It was just the amount of ink that was layered onto the plate itself. But here, you can clearly see there's a difference. It's been long speculated that the thick stamp came before the thin stamp because all of the subsequent releases that we had with Jungle, Fossil, Team Rocket, and so forth, they all had a similar stamp to the thin stamp. And so the thick stamp is only seen on the first edition base set, so that's why people have always assumed if one of them came before the other, if it wasn't a facility thing or just some kind of ink layering thing, that if there was an actual variation and something changed, then that was the one that come first. And this kind of further adds evidence to that because it is dated a month and 4 days before, and it's on the original version and not the version 2 when they may have printed more product to meet demand. So again, a lot of this is still speculation, but I'm giving you information that I found through this stuff. Now I actually want to talk about the sale itself. Like, I'm super happy about it. Like, I could not believe that. I could believe, but then really inside I couldn't believe that I won it for such a good price. I know you guys are probably thinking, well, that's a lot of money, but to me, this right here is something that I would have wanted in my collection forever. Now that I had seen it, if I'd lost it, I probably would have regretted it. But I put in my best bid. I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning and I won it. So I was really happy about that. And I want to talk about some reasons why I think maybe it went low. But again, I'll be honest with you, it wouldn't have surprised me if it'd been lower, but it also wouldn't have surprised me if it went really a whole lot higher. But I want to talk about some of these reasons. I realize that you can get a dangerous territory when you're trying to hype up your own product, but I really don't care with this. It's in my personal collection, and nobody's going to get it from me unless they did offer me something, life-changing. And I'm not saying that it's worth anything close to that at the moment, but I do want to talk about it. And a lot of times we hold back so much in this community because we're afraid of hyping something up. But this isn't like a product that just anybody can buy. Like, I just want to talk about it freely. So I believe that it's very possible that many people had their funds spread around in other bids. There was a lot of stuff going on. Like, if you'd put a bid in, like if you were going for the Illustrator, or you were going for all those black label BGS cards, or the trophy, or the Baccarat trophy glass Pikachu thing, or something in Magic or sports. You could have had a lot of your funds spread around, so you didn't want to bid too high. Like, I've done this in the past. I've made the mistake of going through and bidding on, say something was worth $10,000. I made a bid of $5,000, but I did that on way too many items. And even though I was probably going to lose them all, you still got to keep that in the back of your head. Well, what if I win all this? I got to have the money to be able to supply that. And another thing there is, if you did bid on something and you were winning up until the last second, then your actual funds approval could have been playing a factor into that, because you had to have a certain amount approved by Golden before you could bid. And this is a lot of money, $171,000. That's no joke. And if you were bidding on other items, that could have been an issue. Now, don't get me wrong. There's on the flip side of that, I know a lot of people talked about, well, if somebody bid on it, they had to have that money. Well, that's not necessarily true. I know with mine, I had a $250,000 limit. And the thing was, I didn't apply for that this time. I emailed them and asked them in a previous auction, months and months ago, if I could have an increase. And they were like, well, how does $250,000 sound? Will that get you to where you want to be? And I said, that should be plenty. And that was all that, there was just a short conversation about it, and they approved me. So on one side, it was actually pretty easy to get approved. But on the other, there's people who could have carried through that fund's approval from a long time ago. It really wasn't something that I had to provide any proof for now that I had the money. I did, but if somebody could have very well come in and bid, didn't have that money because of previous funds approval. Another thing is, there really wasn't any comps for this. As far as I know, I paid the most for the thin stamp sheet. I bought that privately. I didn't buy it publicly. The guy who owned this thick stamp sheet before it ever went to Golden, he was having a conversation with me on Instagram, and he wanted about $1 million for it. And I told him, I can't do that. It's just out of my range. It would surprise me if somebody was willing to pay that. However, I can't pay that. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to take it to Golden. And he gave me a heads up when it actually went to Golden. And I really appreciate that, because I ended up winning it, but I may have missed it. And that's another thing. Golden isn't eBay. You do have that element of, seclusion in a way for these auction houses. A lot of these it's got old money there. So there's a ton of traffic that may not have even made it, to Golden. And on top of that, well, we'll go into that here. We'll go into something else here in a minute. But it was also a Wednesday night. It's a terrible night to end auctions. I end auctions every now and then on eBay for myself, but I try not to do anyone's consignments on Wednesdays anymore. Wednesdays or Fridays, they're just bad nights, at least for eBay. Maybe it's different for Golden, but in general, it's not the best time to end it. And there's no automatic bidding process. You don't have Gixin. You can't just type in your highest bid for something and then, let something like Gixin, what it does is it's a free eBay sniper service. If I see an item and it's ending at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to stay up to 2 o'clock and bid on it. I'm going to basically put in my bid and put in the item number, and what it'll do is it'll bid at the last second. And that's really helpful for deterring shield bids and that kind of stuff. But with these auction houses, I mean, you have to have your bid in before it ends. So whenever it ends, whenever they decide that is, you need to be awake. And even for me, I just put in my high bid and I went to sleep. And where Gixin can kind of come into play, or with these automatic bids can come into play, is if people don't spend their money, do they have an opportunity to bid again on a product? Plus they also have this extended bidding thing for 30 minutes. I mean, you could be up all night, so that's a hassle. Plus you've got buyer's premium. You don't know how much insurance is going to be. Are they going to charge me sales tax? There's all these things that play a factor in how much you're going to bid on one of these sites. And the more complicated it is, the harder it is to figure out how much you're going to pay. The harder it is to actually place the bid, then the less likely it is that people are going to place their bid. So I think that these factors could have, I don't know if they actually did or not. I mean, I may have been the absolute highest bidder in the world for this item. They could have played a factor into why it went for the price that it did. And I want to say probably the number one factor is it was overshadowed by the illustrator. I mean, once it hit that $300,000-$400,000 mark, people were like, wow, I'm watching this. And they wanted to see where it was going, and it just kept going up. I think that thing went for $900,000. I don't know if it's actually been confirmed if it was paid for or not, but wow, that is a huge price. Also, think about this. I'm sure this has been mentioned already, but think of how many people missed finding the Pokemon illustrator because they didn't put the word Pokemon in the title. I remember I was searching on Golden trying to find an illustrator. I just typed in Pokemon and I was sorting by highest first. I expected the illustrator to be up at the top. It wasn't there. They didn't put Pokemon in the title. So while the people who were, they were aware that it was there, they found it, they just typed in Illustrator. What about all the people that maybe they just want to find, the highest Pokemon item that's going on that day? And, what if there's millionaires coming from sports or magic or comics or whatever? And there's like, well, maybe I'll just throw in a bid because, I want to have the biggest and best thing there is. And, that they would have missed it completely if they were just casually searching Pokemon. They wouldn't have known to go, hey, let's search specifically for the illustrator. So I thought that was kind of funny. I'm sure that it still had a ton of reach, but all those same factors play into, that I was talking about why the sheet may have stayed low, other than the fact it can't overshadow itself, but all those other factors play into the fact that, I was very impressed with the price point that come through that the Pikachu illustrator had because of all those, in spite of all of that and not having Pokemon in the title. It still got $900,000. It almost tripled up from last year. And who knows, the guy who bought it, they may have paid sales tax. It could have been $1 million purchase right there. Again, it's still speculation. I don't know if it's been confirmed that it actually paid, but somebody did bid that, and somebody else bid pretty close to it. So unless it was just completely botted out somehow with somebody who had huge funds approval and they're getting ready to tank their account, it should get paid for. I would think. I mean, that's what I think the majority of people have on their mind. I mean, you're not going to get approved for that kind of money if you don't. I wouldn't think, anyways, if you don't have serious credentials backing, those funds. Now, why I think that the Uncut sheet was the best deal. One, I love Pokemon Uncut sheets. I'm going to say I'm completely biased. I also have it in my collection now. I have the thin sheet. I've been paying the most for a lot of these sheets for a long time now. And I really think that Uncut sheets are just, they're just one of those items when it doesn't matter who somebody is. When they walk into the room, they see an Uncut sheet hanging on the wall, like, wow, that is really cool. That's impressive. You may not get that from these obscure individual cards. Like, I would dare say that if you took 1,000 random people and you brought them into a room and you had them see the Pokemon Illustrator versus the Uncut sheet, more people are going to be impressed by the Uncut sheet just because of the size, because they recognize Charizard. The Illustrator within the Pokemon community and collectible investors and that kind of stuff, yeah, it's well known. This is the Grail. But I'm telling you now, I would not trade my Uncut sheet for that exact same illustrator if you had both of them sitting in my hands. And I got to pay the same price, or if it was just a straight trade from, or I've already paid for this and, you want to trade. To me, I realize there is a huge price gap, but for me, I just personally like it. So there is a lot of bias into what I'm saying, but for me, I am so happy that, I was able to win it, and I realize this is like a flex brag type video, but I want to share it with you guys. I want to share the information and just let you know, to me, this is just one of those items I'm glad to have in my collection. I'd love to have more. It's very possible that more are out there, but you got to think only less than 5 that I can count first edition uncut sheets of anything in base have ever popped up. We had that one pop up publicly on eBay a while back. I mean, it went from 20 to 40. It was like 20,000 auction, 40,000 buy now. Nobody went for it. Then they went 40 to 60. Then they went just buy now 60, and then they ended up removing it. This was before any of the explosion of stuff. And then after that, I regretted never buying that. I tried reaching out to them, never could get them. And then when I've gotten these last 2 sheets, I only know, I think, of 1 or 2 more sheets that are out there. I think it's only 1, but it's possible there's another one. And it's very possible that somebody's sitting on a pallet of these things. Like, it could happen, but it is so unlikely that I'm confident in paying the price that I did. Now, the one thing that I did want to talk about was the reason I think this is so historic, this uncut sheet, is because, like, it is the most original state of English Pokemon cards. Like, before you have a case of first edition base set boxes, and that's sealed up, you have those 6 individual boxes, and for those 6 individual boxes are sealed up, you have the 36 booster packs that are on the inside. Before you have those 36 individual booster packs, you have the 11 cards that are inside each individual pack. And then before those cards can ever be put inside the individual pack, you have an uncut sheet that has to be sliced, and then the corners have to be rounded. This is before all of that. We get a little glimpse into Pokemon history, and we get to see some of the writing that gets taking place, on top and bottom, and maybe we'll get a little bit more information here and there. But to me, it's Pokemon in its most original state here in America, and this is also going to be, quite biased. I believe Pokemon, without the English, like it being released over here in America, it's not what it is today. Like, Japan is where everything starts. It's the driving force, for continuing Pokemon. But I truly believe, over here in America, like, we made Pokemon explode. We have so many collectors, so many people going all around the world, making these forums, having the information that's constantly being displayed. Pokemon collectors for even the smallest cards. I mean, think about it. We sell bulk common cards, in mass, and we can still get a nickel for those things. I don't think you can do that really in any other hobby. I'm sure you might be able to in some hobbies when it's super scarce, but think of how much Pokemon gets printed, and yet we can still sell bulk Pokemon cards. Sometimes it's as low as 3 cents or 2 cents, and then sometimes it's up at 6, 7 cents. But that's still unheard of in many other games, and it's only in English. And to me, I just love the fact that these sheets are still out there, and I'm trying to preserve them as best I can. I'd love to do them justice and have them displayed somewhere. But as you can see, the sheet that I just bought, I mean, it's pretty sun faded, so it's been displayed somewhere. Somebody's been looking at that thing pretty hard. So I hate that it's unfaded, but at the same time, it's just it's another piece of history, that's there, and everything still has been preserved. You can read the stuff. I'm going to get it out of the sunlight, and maybe one day we can, have a place where we can display all of these things so everybody can see them and enjoy them. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, please understand, I own this sheet, everything I said probably, I mean, if I didn't mean to offend in any way if I did, but it's just how I feel, and I've really enjoyed this collectible, and a lot of times I try to keep, my opinions about something out of it, but because it's so rare and scarce, I don't think, somebody's going to come out with 10 more of these sheets and, ask $1 million because of my little video. But hope you guys enjoyed. If you have questions, please feel free to post them, and I'll try to make sure that I get good pictures kind of edited in here and there. And thanks for watching.